record to the. All right. Well, welcome to the fun, and let's turn it over to you, my friend.
Okay, let me share. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. It's a real honor to be here, pleasure to be here. I have a short little story to share before I get started. And it's about my name, my last name, Dattatreyan. So I worked many years ago at a company called Gannett. They're still around. They're called Tegna now. They print newspapers, except 20 years ago, 25 years ago, newspapers were much more profitable than they are today. Anyway, so I just started this new job. I was a developer, and I was coming into work. I was a security guard there who would greet everyone. He knew everybody by name. I don't know how he did that, but he was able to remember people somehow. And so after about a month of working there, I noticed that this guy, every time I came in the door, he would go choo choo, and he would say hi, and I would go on. I'd get in the elevator, go up, and it's great. Well, like I don't know why is he doing this choo choo bit, And finally, I asked him maybe a week later, and he says, "Dattatreyan. That's how I remember your name." Choo choo. So anyway, thanks for indulging me in that little story. Let me move this over. So our talk today is about staying nimble, right? Applying Agile and Lean to supply chain management. As for me, I am a longtime coach. I've been coaching, just a second. I've been coaching probably for 25 years or so, I'd say more like 20 years. Before I went into technology, I used to run restaurants. So I like to tell people that's where I learned how to be agile and nimble, because you have no choice but to be agile and nimble in a restaurant industry, because the product cycle, if you will, in a restaurant is measured in minutes. When customer places an order, the order goes to the kitchen, you've got to serve it within minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. Or that customer is going to leave you a bad review and probably tell 10 people, hey, don't go to Kumar's restaurant because they're not very good. The food's not good, the service is not good, whatever, right? So that experience in restaurants prepared me for a career. I credit that prepared me for a career in agile, lean systems thinking and things like that. I've got lots of certifications. I didn't bother to put them all, but I worked at Fortune 500s, Fortune 50s, and I've also worked with small businesses to help them achieve profitability or achieve, basically just reach their potential in some way. So I've worked all across the range, if you will, company sizes. Enough about me. So today we're going to be talking about, some of the recent challenges, things that we face today in our world today. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Agile, so we'll do a little short question, and I'll tailor the content based on your understanding of it, your knowledge of it, as well as Lean. I imagine that you all are familiar with Lean thinking, Lean systems thinking, being supply chain professionals. But we'll review some of the basics, and then we'll go into some of the problems that you all face and how Agile and Lean can help. We'll go through a short case study and some ideas on how you can get started with Agile and Lean, and then open it up for questions. All right. So, there we go. So if you would scan that, this is a trial. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but just scan that QR code, use your phone, or just copy this. Let me put this in the chat here, and click that link to answer this question. What are some challenges you're facing today with supply chain, with your business, whatever it might be? I'd love to hear from you. And hopefully these responses will show up as you enter them.
I'm trying to do the scan right now.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else is having the same problem. It's not converting to a link on my Google phone.
There we go. It is working for some. Maybe it's the link I posted in the chat thread will help you.
Okay. Yeah, let's
Okay, economy, pricing, just in time. I don't know what the increases relate to. State suppliers, the current state. Um, okay. This is a word cloud, so it depends on what sorts of words you use. It's gonna sort of categorize them. Capacity constraints. Someone's putting some stuff into chat as well. Thank you. Severe capacity constraints. All right. Talent. Is it finding the right talent, Daniel or Dan? You can just either speak up or.
I'm sorry, say your question again.
Is that finding the right talent?
Oh, it's talent both internally and externally. Uh, with today's job requirements and technology needs, do we provide the talent internally to train them, or do we go out and hire the people for the positions for tomorrow?
Yeah, yeah, that's a challenge. That's definitely a challenge everywhere because the reality is the world is changing so fast, and we don't have people with the skills to fill those positions readily available, right? So it is a challenge for sure. Suppliers, this is showing up as a theme here. Is it can someone sort of elaborate on that? What is it about suppliers that is a challenge?
So, the main issue that I am having with suppliers is that most of our products are single sourced, and you don't have a leverage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's one supplier that supplies it. You don't have that. There's little competition there, and so the supplier holds the cards, and it's hard to improve a process when you have one supplier or two
And
suppliers.
because of the pandemic, there's been a huge consolidation of suppliers,
Yeah,
which leaves you with less leverage, when you're trying to do negotiation for pricing.
yeah, absolutely. I get that. Yeah, we were working in my company, Agile Meridian. We were working with a company in Ohio called BevCorp. They build manufacturing bottling machinery for beverage companies. So the beverage companies that they use these machines to bottle their beverages and cans and sodas and whatnot. And before the pandemic, they were really struggling because they were competing with companies in Europe and in China and so on. And after the pandemic, right, these supply chains got very bogged down. And so people started to look to them to not only manufacture some of the parts they needed for these machines that were manufactured out in Europe or wherever, but also to actually manufacture the whole machine. So it really turned for them. So it kind of forced a lot of manufacturing in the U.S. to start becoming, sort of becoming the suppliers here in this country. At least that's been our experience with some of the companies that we work with. So I don't know if you're finding that as well.
Yeah,
All right.
various companies are having to insource stuff
Yeah.
because of, the supply chain constraints overseas,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that definitely matches our experience. Thanks for that. All right, we're going to move on to the next slide here. Okay, so where do we start? Right, let me move this over. Hold on, I'm just trying. I don't have enough screens. Right. So, so you shared a lot of the challenges, right? I'm just going to kind of review some of them. So, rapid technological change, right? The pace is accelerating, requiring businesses to adapt to new tools, platforms, digital innovations. Customers are changing all the time. They expect personalized, seamless experiences across multiple channels. And that is forcing business to become more responsive, more flexible, and it's really straining supply chains, right? It's straining resources, straining trying to find the right people, all those things. Market volatility, economic uncertainties, geopolitical tensions, pandemic, of course, has exacerbated a lot of these things to a great degree. competition, globalization, all these things have driven changes in industry, right, over the past, especially the past 5 years. Oh, I got a slide there to talk about that, right? So labor shortages, trade disputes, sanctions, climate change, natural disasters, those aren't helping either. So what do we do? How do we survive this? And so this, I'm sure, whoops, I went too far. So you may have heard of VUCA. We're going to go through it. So VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And really volatility, how do we define that? It's the nature, speed, volume, and magnitude of change that is not in a predictable pattern. You can't really predict it. It's volatile. Like the stock market today, for instance. I mean, it went after the CPI announcement this morning, it went down 1%, and then it went up 1.5% or so, depending on which indices you were following. It was very volatile. Unexpected challenges, instability, unknown duration. Those are some characteristics of volatility. Uncertainty, right? So the lack of predictability in issues and events, characterized by unclear, a lack of clarity around the present situation and future outcomes. So it's this uncertainty. How do we plan for these things? How do we respond to these things? Complexity. The world is becoming more and more complex. The pace of change is increasing ever faster. I don't know about you, but the last 5 years have been amazing in terms of the pace of change with AI. And I mean, AI has been around for a long time, but just it seems like in the last 3 years, it's really exploded and has changed how we do business in many ways. I know there's a talk coming up later, maybe in November, December, about AI and supply chain. That will be interesting. I actually thought I would talk about that here, but I decided to keep it more focused on Agile and Lean. And then finally, ambiguity, right? The haziness of reality. How do you make sense of the world that we live in, right? So there are conflicting market signals when launching products. What do people really want? And you don't really know that until you start experimenting. And the reality is, VUCA is increasing, but there's good news, right? Becoming more adaptable, more resilient can minimize the impact of VUCA on our reality. And this is where Agile, Lean systems thinking comes into play. So adaptability reduces the impact. How does it do this? Well, up until about 15, 20 years ago, organizational effectiveness was facilitated through mastering a set of defined skills, right? Building detailed annual and project plans, managing schedule, scope, performance. Not that these things aren't important, they still are, but we need to be more flexible, more nimble than we were 20 years ago. The world has changed, it demands it. Applying long-proven patterns of successes. So 50, 60, 70 years ago, we could do all this, knowing that things aren't going to change as much to disrupt our plans, right? Base business skills, we still need these things. However, we need to build more adaptive skills. The global environment today requires the addition of more adaptive skills in our tool belt. Building collaboration structures and influence faster and across more boundaries between silos within an organization, between organizations within an ecosystem, between countries, right? How do we do that? How do we do that so that we can be more effective in our supply chains, in delivering services and products that people demand today? We need to be more resilient in how we tackle work. How we innovate to solve problems, because we cannot rely on tried and true methods anymore because our world has changed. We need to be more flexible. We need to, someone talked about talent. I think it was Daniel, right? How do we engage a workforce that is ill-equipped to deal with the challenges of today? right? And develop that talent, the skills that they need to survive, skills in working with AI, working with all these new technologies so that they can, sorry about that, so that they can become valuable members of a company, of an organization, right? How do we do that? And this is really those additional adaptive skills that we need to develop in our organizations. All right. So just a quick pulse check. What is Agile, Lean in your experience? If you've had experience with it, I know many of you probably have. Same thing, same link. Use the QR code if you need to. I'm going to post this again. Awesome. Love it. Culture of continuous improvement. Thumbs up. Flexibility, eliminating waste, adapting to change while minimizing waste or risk. I love that. And, Agile, I always say, is a risk mitigation strategy because you're iterating through the changes in short cycles so that you can tackle the riskiest, thorniest issues as early as possible, as soon as you see them. Just in time with less inefficiencies following a flexible, adaptable process. Low-hanging fruit. That's nice. I like that. So let's go after the things that make the most sense and have the most value. Mitigating risk. See if more come in. These are all good definitions. So you have a pretty good understanding of at least the outcomes that you get from Agile or Lean. So that's a good thing. Anything else you want to add? You can just chime in, speak in the mic if you've had experience using Agile methods or Lean methods. Okay, I'm going to move on then. Lean and Agile are adaptive mindsets. That's one thing to remember. And you all, I think you all have at least had some experience based on the responses that you gave. So Lean is more focused on the work, right? A definition that you might use for Lean as a way to improve everything you do by continuously learning how to see and then eliminate anything that doesn't produce value. So removing waste from a system. And that system could be, that restaurant, that order taking system that customer places an order and it goes to the kitchen and they prepare the food and the food goes out, the waiter takes it out and serves it. That could be the system, and looking at all of the steps in that process and trying to eliminate as much waste in the process so that the customer gets the value that they paid for as quickly as possible. Domino's has done a phenomenal job with their lean systems thinking and really done a phenomenal job of addressing a customer need. They don't have the best food, they don't have the best pizza, but they serve it fast and they serve it hot, and they've got the apps that are geared to what customers want, their target audience, college students, young people that want something hot and filling after a night out on town or whatever. From an organizational perspective, whether you're talking about a little restaurant or you talk about a big firm, it's about understanding the flow of work, the flow of value through the organization. What are the trigger points that trigger something of value to flow through the company, to flow all the departments, the divisions in the company? And you start thinking about value chains or supply chains. You start thinking about the connections between companies. How can we make that more efficient? My definition, a human perspective, would be Lean helps humans collaborate better with the flow of work. it helps people understand the actions that they take, what impact it has on the flow of value, right? And how can they make the system more efficient so that more of what they do goes into value producing activities rather than resulting in waste or just wait time, because they're waiting for someone to do something somewhere down the line. And for me, Agile is really about the people, how people work together, right? It's the behaviors, the mindsets, the focused on communication, collaboration, with, of course, an emphasis on quality. So it's about those mindsets. And I think some of you said that on the slide prior to this. From an organizational perspective, it's if Lean is about improving the flow of work value through a system, Agile is about helping the humans become more adaptive and more adaptable and resilient to help them improve the flow of communication, learning, collaboration in their company, through their company. I often talk about learning flow as almost more valuable than anything else. How does the marketing department communicate to the rest of the company the struggles and challenges and learnings that they have gained over the course of the last quarter, 6 months, year, so that their insights can be incorporated downstream, right? Or vice versa, how can the people that are building the widgets share their learnings across the organization that would influence marketing to change their messaging in some way, shape, or form? So learning flow is what I feel Agile helps you do better. And from a human perspective, Agile helps humans collaborate better with other humans. I mean, that's kind of a lofty thing to say, but at the core of it, that's what I feel it can help you do, because I think in a lot of corporate cultures, people have forgotten how to work with other people. You know, and of course, the organization cultures has a lot to do with that, but Agile helps to democratize that to a certain extent, connect people to other people in the company that they may not have had the opportunity to collaborate with. How many here have heard of the Scaled Agile framework? Just a thumbs up or raise of the hand, or no one? Okay, Anil. So one person. So Scaled Agile framework is just a way to scale Agile to a large organization, right? And so in the Scaled Agile framework, there's this event called Program Increment Planning. And in this event, it's an opportunity for executives and people that are building the widgets, if you will, to come together once every quarter and plan together. Right. And in one of these events at one of the clients that I served, I saw this executive speaking to a tester on a team, and they were talking about something, I don't know what, but the conversation they had would never happen. Never ever happened. It never happened before, because there's no way a tester who's not even an employee of the company, there's just a contractor, and a VP or a senior VP in this company would ever have had an opportunity to talk to one another. Right. And what the VP found out was the cause of a problem that had been vexing this company for a year. They couldn't figure out why their cost of care was higher than expected. And so this tester pointed something obscure. She didn't even know the scope of what she was saying to this VP, but it clicked something in this VP's mind and ended up saving the company $700,000 every year from that point forward, once they figured out that little bug. And that's the value of the flow of learning, the knowledge flow that doesn't occur in companies unless you have processes in place that allow people to communicate and collaborate with one another. And this wasn't because of SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework. This was because of the opportunity that was presented from that interaction between the VP and that tester. So what is Lean at its core? So again, I said this earlier, it helps humans interact effectively with their work and their environment. And someone said this before, continuous improvement, continuous learning, right? building a culture of continuous learning to help identify opportunities for gain, and the ability to see and reduce waste. So, to me, Agile and Lean are two sides of the same coin. They both approach it slightly differently, but you cannot have one without another. In fact, Agile in many ways was born out of Lean systems thinking. It just focuses more on the people. So Lean principles, you may have seen this before, I don't know. Number one, what is value? How do you define it? Is it value from the organizational perspective? It should ideally be value from the customers. Who are you serving? Who are the people, the constituency in the marketplace that you're serving? What is valuable to them? And then the second principle is to map your value stream. How does the company earn money? What does the value stream look like? And if you think about supply chain, this has implications, right? So if there's a trigger, that trigger is a trigger for something of value to be built, shipped to the customer. Whatever that thing is that's being built and shipped will have supply chain implications in today's environment. Where are those parts coming from? How efficient are those supply chain operations? Can that widget that's been ordered be built and shipped adequately with quality to serve that customer, right? I mean, of course, that's a very simple example. You have inventory and all that stuff, but we'll talk about inventory in a minute. And then number three, the principle is to create flow, create a seamless flow of value so that you're as efficient as you can be as an organization. And finally, establish pulls. So you don't want to build too much. And this is where inventory kind of creeps in a little bit, right? Inventory equals waste. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. So it's establishing pull, whether it's for a team or an organization, right? It's thinking about if you push things to the team and down to the team for them to do the work, you are not really balancing the capacity of the team to be able to do the work that's being pushed to them. Rather than that, it's much more effective to have the team pull. That's a very basic Kanban lean principle, right? Pull when they have capacity to do the work, more work. And then, of course, Agile, right? The helps them interact more effectively with other humans and the behaviors, the mindsets. And this is all centered around the values of Agile that were written, in 2001, right? These values are less brittle to VUCA, meaning it's less likely VUCA will break people and the systems if people are more, they more adopt these values, adopt the value of individuals and their interactions. And you can take software out and substitute it with whatever. It doesn't have to be just software. Solutions, right? Widgets, whatever. Things that work. Focus more on the outcome and less on the output. Really understanding your customer. What is it that they want? What is it that they need? And maybe even going as far as to say, we know what they don't know what they need. We know what they don't know that they need it. So building things that people don't know they want, like the iPhone, the first iPhone, right? People poo-pooed Steve Jobs and said, oh, there's no way this is going to work. A phone without buttons? How is that ever going to work? Right? And and of course, it revolutionized the phone industry, right? Now everyone has phones without buttons. And then finally, really, this is probably the most important thing is the ability to respond to change, right? Being more resilient in the face of change, less brittle to VUCA versus things that are more brittle to VUCA. And of course, processes and tools are important. It doesn't go away. It's just not as important as the things on the left, right? Value delivery, agility increase as you move to the left. I'm going to stop here. Just any questions, thoughts? There will be time for Q&A at the end, so we can collect it then too.
This is really good so far, buddy.
Okay, awesome. All right, the principles, there are 12 principles for those of you that may not know them. I know there's a few Agilists in the room. So it's these principles, you look at them and you're like, yeah, of course, it's like mom and apple pie. You know, of course you want to do this. You want to satisfy your customer. You want to welcome change. You want to deliver frequently. You want to work together. Of course, you want to be part of a motivated team, face to face. Now, remember, this was written in 2001 when we didn't have the technology we do today, where we can see each other across continents on a video monitor. Although I don't see many of you, only a few of you have your cameras on. Working solutions, right? Constant pace. We don't want to be putting our team through cycles of intense work and followed by no work at all. We want a constant, steady pace so people can have time and to innovate, to think about new ways to do things. All these principles are great. Even in isolation, they're great. But when put together, when a team can adopt these, and they don't have to be a software team. They can be a team that, builds training material. I've worked with teams that do that, and it still works, right? It's not software they're building. They're building stuff to train other people on how to do whatever, supply chain management, perhaps. I don't know. But these principles hold true when put together. They're incredibly powerful. All right, another question. This may be a repetition. I don't know, because I know you shared some of the challenges that you see. Maybe it's more specific to traditional supply chains. If it is repetitive, just put it in the chat and we can move on. Or if you think of new things, specifically with supply chain, put them in the poll. Visibility, okay. Can you elaborate on that? Visibility, yeah, absolutely. Silos, both internally and among supply chain partners. Yeah, that is a good one. Outdated tools, okay. I'm going to ask about this one here, visibility. Can you tell me more, whoever wrote that? Can you tell me more about that?
That's Anil here. So basically, like two functional silos in this traditional supply chain. They never had what somebody is doing. They're basically disconnected.
Okay.
They don't know until what they're doing until they're more reactive in this situation in traditional.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Lead time, inaccurate forecasts, untimely information, outdated tools. Yeah. Awesome. Good stuff. We're going to cover some of these. I don't have all of these in my deck, but I can talk about, I could talk about this all day.
I basically work in the ERP field, so I basically stress more on that when I do my demos about the visibility end to end.
Okay. Very good. Truly partnering with suppliers and customers. What does that look like? Whoever wrote that? Truly partnering with customers, with suppliers and customers.
I didn't write that one, but just on the side of partnering with suppliers, I think during the pandemic, it became paramount in order for companies to continue their operations to partner with their suppliers, especially overseas, to figure out how to fill the gaps of commodities which couldn't just be easily replaced. They were very specific. So one of the things that my company did is we would basically work together to find the replacement parts that were required, and we would share the cost savings or cost adds when applicable. So it was a pure partner effort. I mean, they wanted to build the product, but we had specific requirements. And then when there was gaps in the supply chain of those components, we had to find a way to fill the gap. So, we worked together and we shared in both the cost up and the cost down.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you for that. There's some comments in the chat as well. Race to digitize before simplifying. I really like that. I think I know what you mean. Dave, could you elaborate?
Sure. it seems like we first sometimes, instead of simplifying the process or, going through that and looking for the root causes of, of what's causing, outages and all those things, we tend to, this is not to take anybody personally from an IT vendor here or anything like that, but they try to sell an IT solution to a problem that's really more based upon a poor process.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this eagerness to say that I experienced this in the companies I work for, there's an eagerness to be called a digital company, perhaps before you'd like to say, let's simplify first and let's digitize what's left.
Yeah, no, that
So-
makes a lot of sense to me. I don't, I mean, we do work with supply chain type issues with the companies that we serve from an agile and lean perspective. But that's one of the first things we do is try to figure out, okay, what does the flow look like? What does the process look like? Let's try to simplify it. Let's try to remove the waste. And then we can start to think about the tools and the processes that we want to put in place to automate something.
Yeah, you bet.
I totally get that. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Let's move on. So, I mean, this is based on research I did, in terms of traditional supply chains, some of the things that impact the end result, right? Long lead times. And when you think about that, right? So extended periods between order and delivery. And of course, the impact is a poor response to market changes, right? Among other things. I mean, they're probably, whoops, let me go back. They're probably, because you have long lead times and you may have to also store more inventory, which means you're tying up capital because there are long lead times. And so there's so many impacts, downstream impacts from having long lead times that you have to prepare for. And so this is a challenge. And of course, number two, high inventory levels, right? And so you have to sort of maintain this just in case inventory. And as I mentioned, right, it's costly to hold that excess inventory. You have the storage costs, depreciation costs, or God forbid, the thing becomes obsolete because something new is coming, and it's people want the new thing, right? What was the iPhone, the Apple event yesterday? New iPods, new phones, new everything. So if you have a whole stock of 1 or 2 generation old iPod, what are the things that go in the AirPods? Maybe you have to discount it, right, just to get rid of it, so then you don't make any money because of that. So it's a huge cost center having to carry inventory. You talked about silos, right? Silos, organizational silos, or even between organizations, right? Misaligned goals. Someone said something about goals in the prior slide. Poor communication because of that. Duplicated effort. I talked about the flow of knowledge inside of a company. Because of this lack of flow of knowledge, you have duplicated effort. You have waste in the system because people are doing the same thing, just in slightly different ways in the different departments inside of a company. Is this resonating, or what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Hi, Larry Spinall. I don't know if you want. You just taking questions?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm always a little worried about how this is such a desire to try to make sure you just in time, would make it just what you need, and just to store just what you need to get, and planning for having to do all this when you set up to make anything. If you make just the amount that you need, it actually would cost you more. If you unless it's better to make a whole bunch of stuff and then store it, and then be able to sell it at a later point when the price might be worthwhile. At the same token, you now making it for less money. But there's been a whole movement to try to just get what you need, and I think that's kind of. I think this whole desire to make as little as possible as that possible. And then what happens is the prices will never come down, and the competition becomes overwhelming. And so if you were to build a whole bunch of it, you could undersell everybody by just making a bunch of stuff, and then now you dominate. I'm looking at it from a capitalistic standpoint, and I say it's very smart to be making stuff just what you need. Don't get too crazy. Don't have anything hanging up because they're only going to tax you anyway. But at the same token, the logic of building it up so you can really get it out and it actually costs less to do it. I don't know if that's missed or what.
I think there's a balance. I mean, I don't think you want. There's a case study coming up that I want to talk about, that where a company has managed to lean out their process to such an extent that they are really truly just in time. I mean, Amazon does it, to a certain extent. Zappos does it to a certain extent. They don't carry a lot of inventory. How do they do this? Because they have established partnerships with their suppliers and their supply chain, if you will. And the thing about the fashion industry, when you talk about shoes or clothes, which is the company that I want to highlight, is that fashion changes all the time. So for them, if they carry a large stock of stuff, it's out of fashion within months, right? They can't afford to. And so I guess it's really industry specific. It depends. It depends how much inventory you want to carry or you can carry, and how much capital you can tie up in that inventory and still be reasonably confident that you can still sell it for the price that you initially try to sell it for. But that's a good point. It's a good point. We should revisit it. So the bullwhip effect, right? What is this bullwhip effect? It's demand management. I think this is kind of what you're talking about, Larry, in a way, right? How do you if you're just in time, how do you adjust to the variances in demand for certain things, right? If you don't have resiliency in your system, small demand changes can cause huge disruptions. I think I talked over someone.
No, I was just going to make a comment about aerospace parts. If it's possible to continuously make the same damn parts over and over again, it actually helps everybody. And I know everybody we're always talking about advancing it. What can we do to improve? And like you said, it's fashion applicable. But I think, I know the way I see things. I'm not going to name the name of my company, but they try their damnedest to try to interrelate as many parts into every single things they do so they don't have to redesign and go all crazy with this stuff. And actually, I look at that as a logical approach. I have to assume everybody else does it. I mean, if you want to change your product line a bit, okay, fine, but don't change it too much. That's my logic. That's all. That's all. That is.
I mean, I guess it depends on the product you're building, right? A plane, the life of a plane is much, much longer than the latest fashion garment, right? It's going to last, in some cases, decades. I mean, there's small, minor changes. Sort of, it gets improved all the time. Or if you think of Tesla, the Tesla car, that thing is improved with software updates all the time. But the parts, they don't necessarily have to change all that often, right? And so the supply chain for something big like that is different than when you're talking shoes or fashion. And so with things like that, when there are demand disruptions, it can really cause a bullwhip effect and really impact how a company sort of stocks it. This leads to having to carry excess inventory in many cases. Manual processes, legacy systems. So I'll just tell you before I go into that, I'll just tell you a little story. So the company I'm supporting right now, does not really have to do with supply chain. It's just kind of funny. So they use this old system. I do some work with Amtrak. They use this old system, and so they actually have to manually take data from the old system and put it in the new system because the integration hasn't been built yet. So they have a human interface, literally, between old system, new system, and think of all the errors that happen because of that, right? It's mind-blowing. Anyway, some manual processes, legacy systems, right? Reliance on old and outdated systems, manual data entry, all of these things, difficult to integrate. inefficiencies, prone to error. Focus on cost over resilience. So, there's this idea that we want to keep our costs low, but doing so results in maybe many of the top 5 that I just showed, right? I put the old impact. So this just think of the challenges with cost cutting versus risk management. It really needs to be a more holistic approach to how what the focus should be on. In some cases, maybe you need to spend more so that you can make your system more efficient, whatever that system is. All right, so how Agile can help. So Agile and Lean aren't really competing, in my view. They're not competing methodologies, right? They're complementary. So I like to think of Agile as the ability to change direction quickly. Lean is about moving efficiently in that direction. So together, they can create a supply chain that can respond rapidly to changes while minimizing waste and maximizing value. Because again, we're looking at the whole system, from suppliers to partners to the companies that are using these parts or products or whatever to assemble whatever it is that they're selling, right? So it's really complementary. These two things complement each other. The ability to improve demand forecasting and response. So Agile will help us shift from predict and plan to sense and respond. It's like switching from a weather forecast to a real-time radar, right? Because you're more able to sense and respond to changes in the market. Companies like Zara, they're the fashion company that I want to highlight later. They use point of sale data to adjust production weekly, sometimes even daily. And this responsiveness for them is a game changer because they're in the fashion industry, right? Fashion sense changes all the time. You may have heard of downtime, the acronym. Anyone here heard of downtime? Yes, I see some thumbs up. Okay, awesome. So you know what it is, right? Defects. You want to eliminate them as much as possible. You want to eliminate wait times or at least reduce them. Overproduction. You don't want to produce too much because again, that's expensive, right? It's expensive to carry inventory. We want to reduce wait time. Non-utilized talent. What is that? What is non-utilized talent? Anyone?
Skills
when I
within your
have-
organization that aren't being properly utilized to take full advantage of.
Exactly. What is there was a statistic I read, and I'm sure many of you did too. The engagement rate for employees at the average company. What do you suppose that is as a percentage? Percentage of people that are engaged with the work that they do.
I didn't read about it, but I would guesstimate it's around 70%.
Oh man, if it only was that high. On average,
Yeah, I would give
it's
it
in the
more than
40%
50%.
range.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 40% of people are engaged. They feel engaged. They feel, that their skills are being utilized. And it's a huge problem, right? So non-utilized talent is a big problem. Transportation. In the context of downtime, what do you suppose that is? Transportation.
Movement of services or goods between point A and point B.
Yeah, it could be even within a company. It's like movement of stuff. If it's software, it's just movement of the software to some place where it gets tested, and then movement from there to some place where it gets deployed, and all these movement points cause delays. Motion. What do you suppose that is?
I always classify this as unnecessary steps,
Yeah.
where you're not carrying anything of value. Generally, additional clicks in a program.
That's right.
Additional, yeah. So that's.
Yeah. So if you, I don't know. I was really impressed when I visited both Tesla and Ford, the Rouge plant in Dearborn. And I was really impressed with both for different reasons. The Tesla plant, it struck me how few people were there compared to the Ford plant. Still a lot of people, but compared to the Ford plant, the number of people at the Tesla plant was much reduced. There's a lot of machines and a lot of people operating machines, but not so much, fitting things in the vehicles, where the Dearborn plant had a lot more
Should we get
motion.
political here?
No, not political. It's just an observation.
No, Musk is definitely anti-union, and all the people are unionized.
Yeah, I don't
so
care
there's
about
a
that.
certain
I'm just talking about the factory floor and what
amount of-
I don't care. I don't care. I'm not a big Musk fan, even though I will admit I have a Tesla because it is a very efficient vehicle, and it's probably the best car I've ever owned. But I don't like him, but I like their cars. All right, extra processing. I think Sai kind of covered that. Right. Oh, yeah, the point of motion is that the Ford plant had many more people doing things. I'm not advocating that you get rid of the people. I'm just saying that what can be made more efficient. And I think the Ford plant was efficient in how they were building their vehicles. It's just an observation. And then finally, inventory levels, right? How much inventory are you carrying? All right. Enhancing visibility and collaboration. So Agile helps to break down those silos, promoting transparency across all functions. And to me, it's almost, I liken it to turning on the lights in a dark room. And you talked about visibility. I think it was you, Larry, making things visible, right? And that's to me, one of the core values that Agile brings is making things visible so that people can see all the crap. I was going to use another word, but I'll use crap. All the crap that's hidden, right, in the crevices of an organization. You want to expose it so that you could do something about it. And Agile helps you do that. And then I talked already about information flow, right? Clear, timely flow of information is just as important as the flow of physical goods or digital goods. And I think Lean helps in that sense. And then really traditional supply chains, I think it's more based on push systems, at least from what I've read and what I've experienced. However, more modern supply chains rely on more pull-based systems, like the Zara, the company that I'm going to be talking about. And so it's more efficient, it's more resilient. So you have more just-in-time type processes built in. And of course, all this should result in a faster time to market. These practices can really dramatically speed up product development cycles. Dell revolutionized PC manufacturing by applying these principles, from moving from build to stock to build to order. Right, that was their big aha. Even though they don't make the best computers, they're still quite a behemoth, at least in supplying PCs to corporates. Right, and everything's built to order. Their supply chain has been optimized for that. And then a better focus on customers. Both Agile and Lean start with the customer. It should be a shift from asking, how can we be more efficient, to what does the customer truly value? And this alignment should result in improvement in the supply chain if applied judiciously. All right, I think there's just one more here. Supply chains should be more responsive to disruptions, right? Agile principles will help them become that. It's like having a good immune system, if you will. Okay, so real quick on case studies. How much time do I have, Kenneth?
Well, normally it'd be to 7:15 with Q&A afterwards if you run over by a few. It's a great presentation, so I'm sure no one will mind.
Okay, we'll just go over Zara, and I'll leave the other ones. Zara They set themselves apart, right? In fashion, I don't know if you have. I don't shop there, but this is the research I got. My niece shops there all the time. I don't shop there. So they adopted an agile design, production, distribution practice to respond quickly to the latest fashion trends. They rely heavily on rapid prototyping of designs, and they do this all the time in their stores, right? So they're always looking to their customers in their stores to ask them, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that, right? They produce 30,000 designs annually and refresh their stores with new items every 2 weeks. That's astounding to me. I mean, that just blows your mind. And think of the supply chain that they would have to have set up in order to support that kind of rapid prototyping change, right? So much faster than their competitors. And they produce things in small batches, and worked out deals with their suppliers to maintain some extra capacity. So if demand for a certain design goes up, their suppliers can meet that design because they have these agreements in place. And they don't really do a whole lot of discounts, right? They sell out of their inventory, and then they come up with new designs. So if you missed out, then you missed out. Hopefully you don't miss out again. They create this sort of this demand, and this limited supply that spurs more demand for it. So it's really quite innovative. Supply chain are a key competitive advantage, allowing Xera to provide unprecedented speed, right? So this is definitely a good case study. I would encourage you to read about it. I'm going to go through this, and next steps, if you were to implement Agile and Lean on your next supply chain project, or maybe it's just a project within your company, right? Start with something small. Make sure you have leadership buy-in for this. And when I say buy-in, I don't mean just that they're writing you a check to say, here, yeah, go ahead and do this. I mean that they are actually involved and they're invested in its success, right? Make sure you understand what your culture is like first. You want to build some kind of a burning platform for this so that you can get the support that you need. And then get someone that knows how to do this. Get a good coach, get someone that's been in the trenches before, that has done this type of thing before. All right, questions. You can add them to the Q&A, or you can just shout them out, or you can put them in the chat, whatever you like. Look at that, 7:14, Kenneth.
That is timely, my friend. See, he's a lean. He doesn't have any waste. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions? Let's hit up our friend Kumar. I mean, right now is free Q&A, free advice for you, for your company. Let's get it done, people. Any questions? Or was the presentation totally perfect and you know everything now?
This is really just scratching the surface. And it's all you can do in 45 minutes.
Yep.
This is Larry Spinell. I can't help to think, but talking with a lot of the software engineers, that they're all a little worried about artificial intelligence, and there's just so much of it out there, and it's pounding their workforce and I can't help to think that these guys would love to see it go away, because I can't help to think that's gonna get rid of jobs. And I think that the world of Agile is another area where they're working hard to try to do a lot of Agile, and then let's not do so much AI.
Actually, there's quite a movement. There's quite a movement to combine AI and Agile, and I'm part of that movement. I know it. Right. So in terms of software developers, AI, in my opinion, is not there yet to where you can tell it to. You can do some small things, but you can't develop enterprise solutions using AI exclusively. It still needs a human guide, to tell the AI what to build, right? Without that human, the AI is not going to produce a good result.
Yeah.
And so what I see is a lot of companies using things like, I don't know, the Bing autopilot, right? So developers are using autopilot as almost like you've heard of pair programming, right? So two heads are better
Yep.
than one. Well, one head and an AI intelligence is better than the human alone because it amps up their productivity. I've seen and I've tested where the AI generates the tests and the human writes the code to pass them. So it's really it's pair programming on steroids, right? Without having to pay an additional human, but it makes that developer much more productive. It's also, I see instances where the AI is helping the human become a better developer by code checking, by suggesting improvements to the code, by refactoring the code, things like that. And so I don't see it yet. I mean, I could be convinced maybe in a few years with Chat GPT version whatever, that, if it achieves sentience or something like that, then we're all in trouble. It doesn't matter what job we have.
Yeah.
That's the point. Is I see, having been with the industry for 40 years, I've watched it in the beginning where I was on board with some of the NASA projects with the Chandra X-ray telescope and the Hubble fix, and how we work to get that software. And it was always such a long, tedious process of multiple engineers working together to try to get the code interacting, using a variety of techniques and skills. And now I'm seeing things happening today, rapid rate compared to the years of before. That's the point I'm saying. And that's why a lot of these guys are probably worried.
Yeah, it is definitely a different world right today. And I think it's exciting personally. There's a question out here: potential ways to get buy-in at the higher level with executives more focused on bottom line results. I think really that's it. You said the answer. It's like, what are the results that executives want? Right? Forget the buzzwords of agile and lean and all that. I mean, those are all ways to get there, right? Or the efficiency experts, the Lean Six Sigma experts. All these people come in with heavy methodologies and come in and say, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to. No, at the end of the day, what is the biggest problem you're trying to solve? And you can use agile and lean methods. You can use other methods to try to solve them. But it's at the end of the day, it's about the people. It's about collaboration. It's about information flow. It's about all those things. And so again, I'm going to make a little plug for myself and my company. We've created a method. We call it the disruptor method. And the disruptor method is really simple. It helps a leadership team or an executive team disrupt themselves, because in most companies I go to, executive teams, they are awful at working with each other. They don't collaborate. They're all sort of, protecting their fiefdoms, if you will. And so we go in and help them disrupt themselves, right? It's not awful. I would say it depends on the company, but in many cases, they don't work well together. And so we help them become more a team rather than a group of people with competing interests. And then we implement agile and lean techniques. We don't call it that. We just say, hey, you got to meet more frequently on a cadence. And we've got to sort of think about what are the goals that you're trying to accomplish for the company, and how will you best inspire your people to do that? How will you empower them to make the decisions? Because at the end of the day, these executives should not be micromanaging the work. They should be empowering their people and enabling the talent around them to do what they were hired to do.
Yep.
Right. And so we try to do those kinds of things. And of course, there are all the frameworks. There's Scrum, there's Safe, there's Lean, there's that, all that stuff. But that is less important than working with the people to help them learn how to work together again. Because our companies have gotten so big and so bureaucratic, and it's hard to get people to just talk to one another.
And I think the fact that many people worked remotely for basically 2 years, having, because our company just as of this month, it's 100%. You got to be back in the office. There are exceptions. There's
Yeah.
exceptions, but bringing people back together. I mean, we figured out how to work, but during the pandemic, but it wasn't the same as when everybody was co-located and in common ground. So I think businesses are going to have to grapple with that over again in a different way than maybe
Right.
in the past.
Yeah, exactly. Pandemic changed everything, right? Before the pandemic, it was like, it was, you just go to the office. If you want to be productive, you go to the office. Leaders were very reluctant to let people work from home even 1 day a week or 2 days a week, unless there were companies that were small companies that were dispersed across the country or the globe, and they kind of grew up that way. After the pandemic, didn't have a choice. And it proved to the world that people can be productive working from home or working from wherever they are, right? It's not the best. I miss going to an office. I mean, I often go to an office for work. I mean, when I have clients that require it.
Yep.
But most of my weeks are spent in this room, in these four walls.
Yep.
I'm going to put a link to the disruptor method. There's a quiz that we've developed. It's a very simple quiz. And just ask 4 basic questions, and I'd love feedback on that. It's my partner who is asking the questions in my company, and it helps to think about how decisions get made in a company, and the way you answer defines your disruptor score, right? How likely are you to be disrupted, or your business to be disrupted in the future, or not? And so I recommend you take it, answer the questions, be honest with your responses, thinking about yourself and your organization. And we won't spam you. You will get an email with the results. And if and only if you want to talk to us, you can book an appointment. And the QR code here is just my information. So if you would scan it, that's my digital business card. I would appreciate it. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Any other questions?
Excellent. Well, I'm gonna
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm gonna hit stop recording.
Okay.
So let's do that. Of which I'm not really sure how to do that. Oh, here it is. Stop and hit yes.